In this video, I will explain how your diet prevents you from getting an erection. So let's think about the depth of this problem or the extent of this problem. So we have about 100,000 males in the United States, 18 and older. A little more than that for females, and of course you have the people under the age of 18, males and females. So this comes from the NIH. So National Institutes of Health in the United States. Erectile dysfunction is very common. It affects about 30 million men in America. 1/3. I mean, think about that. 1/3 of the adult males in the U.S. over the age of 18 have ED to varying degrees. Let's look at it by age. This comes from the Cleveland Clinic. Approximately 40% of men at age 40 have ED, and nearly 70% of men are affected by age 70. Clearly, you want to be, if you're 70 or older, you want to be in this 30%. It would be much better if 50, 80, 100% of men were operational at age 70. So, what is another word for erectile dysfunction? Impotence. Inability of a man to achieve an erection or an orgasm. Look, we're also told here, few men suffering from impotence feel confident enough to ask their GP for advice. So if that's you, I'm going to give you a bunch of information you can work with in this short video. So this was published in the Canadian Journal of Urology in 2008, Erectile Dysfunction and Hypogonadism, Low Testosterone. This connection, the low T connection, is not that well studied. What is very well studied, look at this. Erectile dysfunction is one of the earliest signs and markers of present or potential endothelial dysfunction. This is a vascular cell wall problem. I'll show you how that looks in a couple of seconds. So for low testosterone as a potential driver, I did a video back in 2017 on the topic, low testosterone and chronic inflammation. It turns out the way this works in terms of the low T is that the pro-inflammatory proteins called cytokines released by obese fat mass circulates in the body, and once it gets into the testicles, it inhibits Leydig cells. Leydig cells are the cells that produce testosterone. And so Leydig cells are inhibited by the pro-inflammatory proteins called cytokines released by obese fat mass. So obesity really is the big problem, because when you're talking about endothelial dysfunction, it's usually, once again, in obese people who have high blood glucose levels. So I just did a Google search for hypertension and atherosclerosis and erectile dysfunction. So you can see here, this comes from where? The American Heart Association. Erectile dysfunction is frequently a sign of atherosclerosis, clogging, narrowing of arteries. Look at this. Erectile dysfunction usually comes 3 to 5 years before a heart attack. So we'll look at this information here in a moment. I'll show you how this works. So this is really important to get our bodies healthy to avoid this disaster, because once you get ED, then the next thing you're going to potentially get is a heart attack, and then of course life changes dramatically, particularly if you have to have surgery. So blew up what we see here. So let's look at this. This would be normal blood vessel where blood flows freely. Here you can see endothelial dysfunction. The vessel is unable to dilate like this, and so blood flow is slowed as a consequence of blood flow. So you think about an erection, you need blood flow. So if you have endothelial dysfunction, now and I'll show you what this looks like in a moment, the endothelial cells that are in the middle, like right, so this is where the blood is. Well, the blood is in the middle. The bright red is the blood. So this area right in here of the vessel is called endothelial cells. Those endothelial cells, they are the cells that release relaxing factors that allow for this vasodilation to take place. People who are obese, hypertense, have diabetes, they have problems with this vasorelaxation response. So this is a cross-section of the penis. And you can see right here the urethra. So this is where urine flows as well as sperm during ejaculation. And you can see these areas here, they're called, you can see this area here and here. These are called corpus cavernosum. And then around the urethra, you can see it's called corpus spongiosum. These are spongy tissues, and these are the tissues that fill with blood so that a male can get erect. Now notice, in the middle of the corpus cavernosum, you've got arteries. And you have arteries here in the corpus spongiosum. We do not want to have, if you have endothelial cell dysfunction and are unable to vasorelax these arteries in the penis, then you will not get an erection. So once again, this would be resting, and in order to get an erection, you must be able to dilate. If you cannot dilate, you will not get an erection. It is that simple. So what is it? Now there's lots of vasorelaxation factors, but NO stands for nitric oxide. It's actually called nitric oxide produced by the vascular endothelium. Is called endothelial nitric oxide synthase, is the enzyme that causes the endothelial cells produce nitric oxide, and we get increased blood flow. So men who are impotent, who have erectile dysfunction, they have inadequate nitric oxide production. So before I mention obesity, well, here you go. Obesity impairs vasodilation and the blood flow increase mediated by endothelial nitric oxides. Look right here what I underlined. Obesity-induced endothelial dysfunction is associated with decreased nitric oxide production due to impaired endothelial nitric oxide synthase activity. The enzyme is not being produced enough. So, simple, easiest way to restore this is to simply lose weight. This is a critical appraisal article in the Canadian Medical Association Journal that was based upon this article back in 2004. So today's date is July, what is today's date anyway? July 28th, 2022. So you're talking 18 years later, almost going on 20 years. Look at the title of this article, Effective Lifestyle Changes on Erectile Dysfunction in Obese Men. If you want to restore erectile activity, get rid of your erectile dysfunction, get your body weight down as low as you need to get it down until you're able to get an erection. It is that simple. People who are diabetic also have erectile dysfunction. Men who are hypertense are almost twice as likely to have impaired penile blood flow and erectile dysfunction compared to men with normal blood pressure. And this is bad news. So a friend of mine, medical doctor who actually runs a hospital chain, he calls these people who are hypertense, obese, diabetics, he calls them Hondas. He says, don't be a Honda. What's a Honda? A hypertense, obese, non-compliant, diabetic, type 2 diabetes, with anything else. In this case, ED. So now think about this. If you are hypertense, obese, have diabetes, and have ED, what are you going to do? Try to take multiple medications to fix all this? Is impossible. You got to lose weight. You need to get your biological markers back where they should be. So you want to normalize your blood pressure. You want to reduce obesity down to you want to lose weight down to a manageable level so that all your inflammatory markers are normal. One of the biggies, of course, is blood glucose as well as lipids. So all of this is discussed in this book, The DeFlame Diet. And it's nothing to do with specific conditions, although they're generally discussed. The problem with all of these problems here is that they are chronic inflammatory states. That is what they are. So lots of guys who have ED also play golf. So I just created a new YouTube video called The Amateur Golfer's Dilemma if you'd like to figure out. Now this is about the problem that we amateurs have that teaching pros and really good players do not understand. So I outline all this and things that can be done. So a recent video. Pro golfers swing from their heels, amateur golfers swing from their toes. So that's a good one to start with, as well as the first video that will illustrate the problem that we amateurs suffer from. Okay, back to erectile dysfunction. So I did a Google search, atherosclerosis in penis cavernous arteries. The most common vascular cause is atherosclerosis of the cavernous arteries of the penis, often related to smoking and diabetes. We've already talked about hypertension and obesity. So let's look at the anatomy of an artery. So remember, you've got 4 arteries that deliver blood to the penis to get an erection. And so one is the lumen of the artery. This is where blood flows. So this pink stuff is blood. Maybe I should have made it brighter. Anyway, it's blood. These are your endothelial cells right here. This is the endothelial cell layer. You can see endothelial number 2. Below that, number 3, smooth muscle cells. So endothelial cells release nitric oxide that is released down into the muscular layer, and that causes the smooth muscle cells to relax, and that allows for blood flow to take place. So one of the big misnomers about atherosclerosis is that it is a buildup of cholesterol and fat on top of the artery layer that would obviously impede blood flow. Clearly the lumen is smaller, but that is not how it works. This is how it works. There is a very diverse pro-inflammatory state that causes the lumen to narrow. So C-reactive protein is considered to be a marker of endothelial dysfunction as well as chronic inflammation. Here is hyperglycemia. It will drive atherosclerosis, and multiple other things drive it. So you have oxidized LDL, not healthy regular LDL. Advanced glycation end products from hyperglycemia, too much omega-6 fatty acids, free radicals, endotoxin, immune cell infiltration, and then too many pro-inflammatory cytokines and matrix metalloproteinases. That's a lot of information I just told you in a flash. I'm not going to go into more detail. All these different substances are discussed in these 2 books, and in this book I go through the details of how the vascular wall becomes compromised. I also describe it in this book in case you are a golfer. So this book, DeFlame Your Joints, Muscles, Bones from Rotting, or Stop Your Joints, Muscles, and Bones from Rotting, as well as this book, they have very similar information. The difference between the 2 books is that this book adds golf information in there, or describes all this in the context of golf. So what should you do? This is very simple, what we should do to reverse the Honda situation. So notice I call this the DeFlame diet approach. It's not a specific diet. You want to avoid excess calories. We should weigh what we weighed when we were in high school or college when we achieved a proper healthy weight. Avoid empty calories, refined sugar, flour, and oils, and excess salt, an absolute disaster for chronic inflammation. Maximize our nutrient to calorie ratio. Whole grains versus vegetables, if you compare same amount of calories, calorie to calorie, you will see that massively more nutrients and fiber are found in vegetables compared to whole grains. So you have 3 dietary options. You can be a vegan. By the way, they call vegan now plant-based, which is just a crappy word. It's not true. Plant-based. They call this a plant-based diet, and everything else they call meat-based. It's ridiculous. It should be a no-meat diet, right? Only plant. It should be plant-based. It's only plant-related and other vegetation. Well, I guess they're all plants, but then seeds, of course, as well, and potatoes and all the rest. But so only plant was what a vegan is. Here you have animal products and vegetation, and this is just pure animal. Now, I don't know why you'd want to do this or this. Most people choose this. And then simple supplements. Supplements for what purpose? To create an anti-inflammatory state. Do you need to take all these? I don't know. Nobody knows for sure. I can tell you this much. The best bang for your buck in terms of supplements to reduce chronic inflammation is to get adequate magnesium, vitamin D, and omega-3 fatty acids. Now, I discuss all of these nutrients in the context of reducing one's inflammatory state in my various books. Now, this book here, in terms of obesity, is not a book about what to eat. The book is about how to get a handle on our aberrant psychological and physiological state that exists with obesity that serves as a barrier to lose weight. So this is basically a book about how to lose weight, too, and it works on, well, the information is designed to get into our brain, so it's really a psychological book. So you can kind of get control of your mind when it comes to the eating scenario. So where can you get all these books from? Well, all you have to do if you want is you can go right to Amazon and just put in DeFlame Diet by David Seaman, and my books will appear. I've got 7 books there. You can also go to DeFlame.com if you want to just click right through. If you just click here, read more, or come to the page you click on, you go right to Amazon for a single book, or you can buy volumes at DeFlame.com if you have an interest.